if you're learning to draw and you're pretty much doing this yourself, in that you're not in a course, you don't have a teacher who gives you direction, but you're finding material, whether it's in books, but probably if you're watching this in videos, then this is the biggest mistake I believe as a beginner learning to draw you're going to make. And it's probably a mistake that's more to do with the learning to draw process, with the learning process, than the drawing process itself. But in the end, if we're not learning well, that's going to show in our drawing. It's going to greatly hold back our ability to learn comfortably, easily, as naturally as we might otherwise learn. And it may end up, we get so discouraged that we give up because it all feels too hard, too confusing. Now, while I'm explaining this, you're watching a drawing demo, and this is a great place to start in explaining what this issue is. Because what you're seeing is a reference scene in Paris, and you're watching me draw it directly in ink with a 0.3mm Copic fine liner pen. And you're watching this at a quarter drawing speed again. So this is 1 1/4 speed. So this 12 minutes actually took me 16 minutes to draw in real time. And while you're looking at this, what you're probably doing is you're probably first drawn towards the actual drawing part because that's of most interest. But as you watch me draw something, my guess is you're looking back at my reference and seeing what am I looking at and how now am I drawing it. You're seeing what I've seen, and you're looking at the choices I'm making of all the possibilities of putting ink on the paper to draw that same object. In this particular case right now, this tree. And possibly you're looking even more intently at the tree to see how I'm going to do this, particularly in a very fast drawing, because this drawing was always designed when I first made it for a video on drawing quickly, quick daily drawing exercises. So you're probably looking to think, well, how's he going to draw what can be a confusing and complicating subject such as a tree quickly with a pen? So you're probably looking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you may not be thinking of it in these terms, but what you're actually doing is in the way I understand drawing, is you'll be looking to try and understand how I'm translating the tree or any part of this scene, this photo, into my drawing. How I go from one thing, which is a photo printed with a photographic process, how I go translating that, changing that into ink marks on a paper, black and white, or just black actually, ink marks on a white sheet of paper using a pen. And as I said, particularly for the trickier parts, particularly for the parts where it's perhaps not so obvious, it's not particularly a fairly simple geometric shape that we think we can just copy with lines, but it becomes more complex than that, particularly what's often known as the textured parts or the detailed parts. And let me say, this is a good way to watch a demo such as this, to be looking back and forth and to be working out how this translation is happening. That's not the problem. The problem is when we watch a video where we only see the drawing appear, where we don't see the reference next to it. Because now we have no way of understanding what's happening. We can see what's happening. We can see the artist put the ink on the paper and create whatever drawing with whatever effects they want to. But what we don't get is any understanding of why he's doing it, of what's prompting the marks, the lines to look like this. We don't see the photo. Now, if they're drawing from their imagination, it's just as much a dilemma for us because we clearly are never going to see into their mind. So we can't see what they're trying to attempt when they draw. And this is, I think, quite devastating for the learning process, because in the end, what we're trying to do is learn to understand how we draw. We're trying to learn a process, not to do a particular drawing. And so the very best demos, I believe, are not just the ones where we're actually able to see the photo reference while it's being drawn, but where the artist in a voiceover is giving some sort of insight into their thinking, how they're looking at the reference and working out what marks will create the effect that they want for their drawing. That we get some understanding of how the artist does this translation work. We get some understanding of their thought processes, because as a new person learning to draw, in the end, what I have to learn to do is not to draw straight lines so much. There are certain skills I need to learn. There are certain theoretical things, such as perspective, I probably need to come to understand at some point. But in the end, those things are just tools. What I need to do is to understand the process so I can make all the decisions about what tools I'm going to use, what tools I need to use, the different ways to use these tools under different circumstances to create different effects. These are the hard issues to learn to draw. And we don't learn to draw, we don't learn them if the teaching material we're using gives us no insight into how we learn to understand what we're doing when we're drawing. Gives us a theoretical framework for the whole drawing process. And if you've watched many of my videos, you'll know I do talk a lot about drawing in my thinking as a translation from one visual language, the photo, to another, the ink marks on the paper, and how some things can be almost copied line for line, simple geometric shapes, but other parts of a drawing, we can't possibly draw the detail, we can't possibly outline the complexity of the shapes and the lighting effects that are being created at that point. And so we need a different approach. And for me, that's trying to capture the overall effect with marks that often look very different to what I'm actually looking at. So if you look at this tree here, there's no way those marks line up one for one with any marks on the tree in the photo. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to say the same thing, but in a different way, because I'm speaking a different language, and my pen, ink, line, and mark on paper can't reproduce the language of the leaf canopy of that tree directly. So I have to find another way of saying the same thing. Now, this is all connected with my process of understanding the drawing process, and it's this understanding that guides me when I come up with a subject I've never drawn before, or a subject that's similar but has some fundamental differences to what I've drawn before, because it lets me work out what marks are going to be needed to create the effect. It gives me a framework to forge into new territory. And if I just watch a drawing appear on paper and have no understanding either from the photo or the voiceover why it's happening in this way, it may be entertaining. I may be very impressed with the artist's skill, but as a learning exercise for someone beginning to learn the skill of drawing, and it's a skill that we need to learn as much as any skill. It's no different to having to work hard and work systematically to learn playing the piano or how to play football. If I approach this skill just seeing someone do it, I won't learn it. I can go to all the concerts in the world, all the piano concerts, and that won't teach me how to play the piano. It may make me really want to learn, but it won't actually teach me how I can learn. And if I'm doing my drawing learning journey pretty much on my own, if I'm having to choose my material, then I need to choose material that's going to set me up to learn and not set me up to frustrate me. Because the problem with watching a video with no understanding is, at best, I'm probably going to be tempted simply just to follow along. And if you were trying to draw this at the same time I'm drawing it, let's say I slowed it down that quarter extra, so you were watching this in 16 minutes and you were trying to draw along with me, what's going to happen is you're not going to have time to look at my photo as I'm doing when I draw. You're going to be very focused on looking at my marks on the paper so you can make the same marks in the same place on your sheet of paper. And so in the end, you're going to just be copying my drawing without time or feeling the need to look at the photo. Now, at the end of this process, you may have quite a nice looking drawing, and that may, well, it probably will encourage you to feel that you've learned something and you've done something productive. But what you've learned is, you've started to learn anyway, is how to copy, particularly how to copy a drawing that's being done in real time or close to real time, while you, at the same time that you copy your drawing. Or you may actually watch the video and then copy the drawing afterwards. But the problem is still the focus is going to be, when we copy a drawing, we're looking at those lines and we're putting them on our sheet of paper. And we're trying to connect them all at the same angle, whether there's a voiceover saying, now draw this line next and draw this line and now connect these, now colour in this part, hatch this way in this part, whatever. Whether there's someone giving us direction about our copying or not, it's still fundamentally copying if no one is explaining the understanding as to what we're doing and why. And that's not just the marks on the paper, that's also where we start and how we complete the whole drawing. What we start with, where we progress, the rhythm, the tempo. It's pointing out all the elements that are involved in a drawing. So, drawing from a drawing is in a sense even less helpful, and that's the other mistake beginners make. We find the drawings that inspire us and we seek to copy the marks. And the truth is, it's not being able to put the marks on the paper that's really difficult about drawing. It's knowing what marks to put, where, when, how to layer them, which ones to do first, which ones to leave till last, how to build up the overall effect, where to start in a given scene. What are the principles, the guidelines that help us choose the best starting point? Do I just, if I'm copying from a photo, start in one corner and move across the page? Should I start at the bottom and work up? Should I start in the middle and work out? How do I know where to start? How do I know where to go next? Watching one drawing or even a series of drawings appear with no explanation from the artist as to why I'm starting here, what I'm trying to do, why I'm making my marks this way, things where perhaps I'm doing something in a certain way because of what's going to come in the second half of the drawing. I'm often not going to catch on to that, particularly as a beginner. And so if it's not being explained to me, I can be putting a lot of time and an energy into something that's not actually going to help me. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this has given some idea of what I think is the huge mistake of watching videos that don't give understanding because either because there's no voiceover, but also because we can't see the reference, or from copying photos. Copying is a skill. It's a great skill to learn if we want to be able to copy. But if we want to be able to draw original drawings that no one's drawn before, learning to copy is not a skill that will take us there. And it will distract us and maybe discourage us from the skill that we actually want to learn. So, hope that's been helpful. But look, in the end, whatever you draw, however you're drawing it, for whatever reason you're drawing it, and however it turns out, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.